Anush, Madiha and her family is here. Do you still want to do that at the end?
Whatever your preference is.
I don't have any preferences. This is your show.
Well, since we have people trickling in, we could always do the first 10 minutes. My only point was you'd have no disruptions if you did.
Yeah, let's do it right after I finish, inshallah. Yeah, let's do that. وعليكم جزاك الله خير. السلام ورحمة الله. You have this serious like North African طارق ibn Ziyad. Nice. All right, everyone is ready. Bismillah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. I begin in the name of Allah. I invoke His peace and blessings upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I ask Allah to extend His blessings to the Prophet's family and descendants, his companions and followers, and the men and women that walk in the footsteps. And I ask Allah to make us among them. Allahumma ameen. Tonight is a very special night. It's the very first Tafseerah session inside our masjid. I'm very happy, alhamdulillah. This is a night to celebrate. We actually have some people here who have had an instrumental role in making this facility ready for us. So jazakallah khair and all the works that you guys have done. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you. And obviously, all of you guys were participants in in the Tafseerah program. Some of you have been here since its inception 5 years ago. And it's through your diligent, continuous presence and support and attendance that the Tafseerah program continues to, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, to be the closest program to my heart personally. We're expecting the attendance to be a little bit on the lower side. People just read the news, 155,000 cases. Everyone freaks out and they just want to stay home. So we completely understand. That's why we have the live feed on Facebook and YouTube. So inshallah, if you are joining us online, please do share the video and invite other people to join, inshallah ta'ala, as well. I know that it's easy for people to succumb, so to speak, to the negativity. There's a lot of negative things that are happening in the world. Quite honestly, tonight, I see that Trump is on his way out from the presidency. I see that Muslims, alhamdulillah, have discovered the vaccine for the coronavirus. When the Trump used to say it's the Chinese virus, well, now it's the Muslim vaccine. I think there's a historic irony about that, knowing how China has been treating Muslims. So China creates a problem and we fix it. You're welcome. And so it's also the first night inside our masjid. I think there's so much, like I said, to celebrate. Always see the cup half full, not half empty. Always say Alhamdulillah. There's so many blessings. Every day is a gift. In fact, every hour is a gift. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen for his ni'mah that he showers upon each and every one of us every single day. Allahumma lak alhamd. I wanted to also thank Sister Layla over there, because it's through her diligent effort and management and organization that we are sitting here today. It took a large team, alhamdulillah, to pull it off, but here we are, and it feels much better than Sierra Gardens and the other locations, because this is ours, alhamdulillah. This is not a rental property. This belongs to our Muslim community, and for that we are absolutely and utterly grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So back to our tafseerah, inshallah. I said that I think last time when we covered the Surah Shura, the last surah that we covered, I indicated that so far we are in year 11 of the prophetic mission. So we're looking at about a year and a half before Hijrah. And the Tafseerah program focuses on covering the surahs of the Quran as they were revealed, in accordance with the actual order of their revelation, which is different from the order of their collection in the actual book of Quran that we have. And so we've covered 11 and a half years so far of the prophetic mission, 65 surahs of the Quran, alhamdulillah. And year 11 is a very critical year. This is the year in which Isra and Mi'raj happens, according to the positions of the scholars that we've adopted. We don't know exactly when in year 11, but we know that it happened in this particular year. So the events of the seerah and the surahs of the Quran reflect the priorities of this phase, basically. And some of the things that we've discussed before, the Muslim community is about to win the battle, is about to perform hijrah and move to Medina and establish a new state. It's not a small minority that is being marginalized and sidelines and persecuted. The Muslim community is about to become this powerful force to be reckoned. So through Surah Az-Zumar, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught the ummah about ikhlas, about how to purify your intention and to basically attribute all the blessings and all the successes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to not your hard work. And we've covered Surah Az-Zumar weeks ago. It is also a phase in which the Prophet ﷺ is now making da'wah to leaders who are not from Quraysh, who are not from Mecca. And he's had a lot of success in that regard. A lot of these great people who have converted to Islam, they were not necessarily from the city of Mecca. One notable figure is Tufayl ibn Amr, for example, who was the chief of one of the largest tribes in Yemen. And because of his conversion in year 11, a lot of people in Yemen converted to Islam as well. So there is the spread of Islam that is happening a little bit within Mecca, but also outside Mecca as well. So through Surah Ghafir, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught the Muslims and taught the Ummah the ethics and the manners of da'wah, right? And we've covered Surah Ghafir, a few weeks ago. The Ummah is also being prepared, as I said before, for the spiritual transfer of leadership. Who held spiritual leadership in the world before the Muslims? Primarily the Hebrews, the Jews, right? For the longest time. Remember, this is 600 years after Jesus. Christianity is still kind of like getting out of the box, building itself up. The church is being consolidated. The Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, is becoming stronger and stronger. Christianity so far is only providing guidance to its own followers, but Judaism historically was the powerful spiritual force in the world. Now that leadership is being transferred to the Muslims. So through Surah Fussilat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught us about that transfer. And that's why I was leaning, when we covered Surah Fussilat, I was leaning more to say that Isra and Mi'raj happened either before or after Surah Fussilat. It just made more sense that way, although we are not 100% sure. We also said that the Ummah was being prepared for the cost of triumph and the cost of victory and the cost of success. When the potato is hot, everyone is throwing it to each other, right? But when it becomes delicious and ready to consume, everyone is gonna want a piece of the pie. And so the Muslims are about to establish a state. They are about to become successful. They are about to be strong. So the potential for power struggles, the potential for lust for leadership and so forth is becoming increasingly strong. So through Surah Shura, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches the early Muslim generation and the rest of us about the necessities of shura and the process of consultation in order to avoid power struggle, right? So this was sort of like an overview of the surahs of year 11 that we've covered so far. Many of these surahs, in fact, most of them are from the Hawamim. And I said the Hawamim are the surahs that start with the letters Hamim, the disjointed letters Hamim. And I said before that the disjointed letters are interesting because it is almost Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing the Arabs in particular, because they were very eloquent with their language. He's telling them the raw material of language, which is the letters of the alphabet, you can turn it into poetry or you can turn it into prose. I can turn it into the timeless Quran that I have. So he was posing a challenge to them. Hamim, Alif Lam Mim, Alif Lam Mim Ra, Alif Lam Mim Sad, Kaf Ha Ya Ain Sad, right? Qaf, Sad, all these disjointed letters at the beginning of the surahs. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just almost like telling them, I will take the raw material of gold or whatever the diamonds that are hidden in dirt, and I will take this raw material and turn it into the absolutely influential language of the Quran that will change the world. You've had your poetry for centuries. What did it do? It's something that you sit in your social gatherings and listen to and enjoy. But the Quran changes people's hearts, changes people's minds, and changes the world. The Quran established a new civilization, right? I said that the Hawamim, the surahs of year 11, had commonalities between them, very, very common qualities, right? I said before that they're all Meccan surahs. They're all revealed in year 11. In the order of the Mus'haf, our actual Quran, they all, in the Quran itself, in the index, they're between the Juz 23 and Juz 26, right? They all start with Hamim. And after Hamim, there's always a reference to the Quran, and I talked about that before. And they all mention the Hebrews, Bani Israel, and Musa alayhi salam. And these are the commonalities of the Hawamim that I mentioned to you guys before. Now, as part of the process of preparing the Ummah, okay, I said before that the other surahs, each surah prepares the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for an upcoming impending challenge that they were expected to handle or deal with, right? And one of the inevitable challenges that the Muslim Ummah was going to face was the challenge of wealth and the challenge of success, material success. Okay, the disparity is so massive between the simple life that the Arabs used to live, with their goats and sheep, with their nomadic lifestyle, with their simple urban establishments. Compare that with the Romans and the Persians and how they lived, right? It's unthinkable for the Arabs. And so let's say that we're in year 11 today. Only maybe 10 or 15 years later, some of these young guys will become generals and conquerors, and they will become governors of massive cities, and they will defeat the Romans and the Persians, and they will be in possession of massive amounts of gold and diamond and wealth and huge castles and formidable possessions of the enemy and palaces and so forth. What type of spiritual preparation is needed for you to be ready for this unthinkable reality? From the simplicity of the Bedouin lifestyle, the desert lifestyle, you wake up, right before sunset, you start your day and you go to bed, right after Maghrib, and it's a very, very simple lifestyle, to the absolute hustle and bustle of, European or Persian urban establishments. The discrepancy is huge. And in that discrepancy, there is a huge potential for the hearts of men to be corrupted, for the hearts of men to lose their sense of direction, to lose their sense of purpose, to lose their balance, to be completely sucked into the material and the wealth and the concubines and the palaces and the power and giving people commands, and suddenly you used to be a goat herder, suddenly you've become the governor of Iraq, right? What kind of heart could handle something like this, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to reveal a surah again to prepare the followers of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but also prepare the rest of the ummah, as to how to handle wealth, how to handle the superficial appearances of the world, how to handle the ornamentation of the world, how to handle the what's the word that they use, the pizzazz, the bling bling. How do we handle wealth? When Umar ibn al-Khattab was Khalifa, right, and the Muslims conquered major parts of the territorial acquisition in Persia was happening by the day. It was absolutely astounding. Never happened in history before, right? That a huge empire that lasted 1,000 years, that posed a drastic threat to the Greeks and the Romans, would really be flipped like this in just a few months. Crumbles in a few months. Khalid ibn al-Walid, really, every day he was acquiring 100 miles deep inland into the territories of the Persians. Okay, so the changes were so quick and drastic, right? So after the Battle of Nahawand, when one of the major cities of Persia fell, all the wealth came back to Medina. The looting of war or the spoils of war came back to Medina. And all these soldiers, thousands and thousands of soldiers, but they only take 1/5. 1/5 is distributed amongst the soldiers. 4/5 are going back to the central government to be distributed the way it needs to be distributed. So Umar ibn al-Khattab looks at the chests after chests after chests of diamonds and gold and silver, and oh my God, he looks at that, and Umar himself, he was about to lose his cool, in the sense that he was so astonished, and he said, "Inna qawman addu hadha la umana." People, soldiers who would deliver this back and not kind of take some of it to themselves, or go take the treasure chest and dig it and hide it in the desert somewhere. People who did this are trustworthy people. It takes so much discipline and so much strength to say no to the embellishments and the ornamentation of dunya, and to still do the right thing. Okay, I was actually just reading the news recently. So I said earlier that the power Turkish couple that discovered the coronavirus vaccine. Okay, so his wife is a German Turkish, born and raised in Germany, but the guy himself, Shaheen, he is actually a Turkish immigrant. Okay, so thinking in the early 2000s, they started this little company, and they sold the company for 1.2 billion or something like that. So they actually became, I think, in the top 100 most wealthiest people in Germany. And then they established another company. Last year, the NASDAQ value of that company was about $2.4 billion. Once Pfizer announced the coronavirus vaccine in collaboration with their company, I don't remember what the company's name is called in Germany, their value jumped to $26 billion. Okay, so I was thinking about this. I'm like, why did they discover the vaccine, but the vaccine is being released in the world under Pfizer. Why is it being released under Pfizer? I mean, this is a pretty huge German company. And then, I did a little research, and it occurred to me that sometimes when you have a very valuable commodity, if you keep it to yourself and build it up and sell it and distribute it, you will make a lot of money. But if you just sell it right away to somebody else and save yourself the trouble, you will sell it for a lot less, but you still made some money. Okay? It's like the lottery. Someone wins the lottery, so they'll tell you, you can get $75 million, but over 30 years, or we can give you 20 and you get it right away. Most people choose what? They choose to get the money right away, which always boggled me. Like, I was like, does it really matter? So you're making all this money every year, $75 million over 30 years. That means you're making a lot. You're making how much every year? Like you do the math, you're making millions every year. So do you really need your 20 million right away? Like, what are you going to do with your 20 million? But that's how human beings are. They always go for the immediate pleasure. They always go for the instant gratification. I want it now, right? So Pfizer offers these guys some money, and she says, hey, I'll just take the vaccine off your hands, and we will take care of the distribution. We will, take care of the research, the government permitting, the FDA. We're going to take care of all that. I'm just going to pay you guys some money. We'll still give you credit and recognize you, but the product becomes ours. Had they chosen to keep the product with them, it would have taken them maybe a little bit longer, more effort. And we're like, you know what? Let's just sell it and cash out, get our 20 million right now, instead of getting 75 million down the road. This is such a fundamental human tendency, is to go for the distraction of wealth right now, whatever I can get now, as opposed to what I can get later. Surah Zukhruf addresses that. Okay, Surah Zukhruf tells us that as a Muslim community, one day you're going to become wealthy. One day, talking to the followers of the Prophet ﷺ, one day you're going to become wealthy. One day you're going to accumulate wealth. One day you're going to be distracted. It's all Zukhruf. It's all just ornamentation of the world. Don't let that get to you. Don't let that get under your skin. Let me ask you a question. What is the meaning of the word Zukhruf? Like in Arabic, when we say Zakhrafa or Zakharif, what does it mean? Say again? Naqsh, meaning like, making something beautiful, right? Zina, like ornamentation, okay? That's essentially what it means. But linguistically, this is the secondary meaning of the word Zukhruf. Linguistically, the word Zukhruf actually means gold. Zukhruf in Arabic means gold. And gold is used to make things beautiful. Gold is used to beautify things. So the verb of beautification in Arabic became zakhrafa or yuzakhrif. Okay? Like goldify. Does that make sense? To goldify something? Okay? So that is the meaning of the word Zukhruf. Surah Zukhruf foretells or predicts the military success of the Muslims, the territorial acquisition that the Muslims are about to embark upon, the big empire that is in the making. And it's basically telling them, number one, you should never, ever, ever allow that to distract you from the simple fact that the true ornamentation is not of this dunya, it is in Jannah. And number two, do not ever allow yourselves to gauge people's success based on how much wealth they have, right? So this is the direct meaning of the surah, right? The direct meaning of the surah is beware of that materialism. Be aware of the superficial appearances. Be aware of things that look beautiful, but maybe deep inside they're not as beautiful, right? It is all zukhruf, and zukhruf essentially is an act of beautification that happens from the outside or the inside. That's by definition it happens on the outside. I can get the greatest calligrapher in the world and have him, paint a beautiful mural of Islamic calligraphy on that wall. Would that be zukhruf or not? Yeah. It is. But there could be termites eating that wall from the inside and you just can't see it. You understand the difference? Sometimes wealth is just about, what things look from the outside, how beautiful, they are, from that outer veneer, so to speak. But you don't know what's inside. Well, ultimately, some buildings are also strong on the inside. They look beautiful outside and inside, but quite often it is just beautiful on the inside, but it's not beautiful on the outside, but not on the inside, right? This is the direct meaning. And part of that direct meaning is the space that wealth occupies in your mind as a Muslim, okay? So the moral distinctions that we make between people. Someone who is not dressed appropriately. So for example, at Salatul Jum'ah, you will see two brothers. One of them, parks his very expensive Mercedes and walks in with a fancy suit and very expensive shoes or whatever, versus someone who parks an old car and walks into the masjid, and that person, maybe works for, I don't know, Jiffy Lube or something, just like a day laborer who comes here with his work outfit. And you look at those two brothers. Can you gauge their taqwa by looking at them? Can you gauge their commitment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Can you gauge the goodness of their heart? Can you gauge their success in life by looking at them? Some people will say yes, because their definition of success is entirely material. If your definition of success is entirely material, then you will say that this person who looks wealthy is more successful than the other person, okay? And quite honestly, we all fall in that trap because we all live in the West. And in the West, the success of anything or anyone is entirely based on their wealth. So you look at a company, for example, the net worth of a company is determined by what? By how much money they have, or how much sales they've done in 1 year, right? They don't look at whether the company treats its employees well or not, whether there's a positive work environment, whether it's socially responsible, whether it's environmentally responsible. No one looks at that. The only gauge of success is how much money that company has, okay? We don't even look at how harmful their products are. So, we automatically say that Google is a successful company. Can anyone argue with that statement? But what is success? Is Google successful because it provided us with a search engine? Is Google successful because it provided us with navigation? Because it provided us with Gmail? These tools have made our lives more convenient, but did it make us happier? Am I happier when I use the GPS navigation or when I use the good old AAA maps? Which one makes me happier? Well, that's a different question. That has to be investigated, right? Am I happier when I send my family overseas actual letters? Or am I happier because they receive my Gmail 5 minutes later, the notification on their smartphones? Do you see how serious this can become? And so Surah Zukhruf basically tells you that wealth is not, it could be, but it is not the only gauge of success. It is the only gauge of success if your worldview is a materialistic worldview, is a material worldview, right? And that takes me to the deeper meaning of Surah Zukhruf. Because Surah Zukhruf talks about materialism in that spiritual sense. Don't allow material wealth to occupy your heart, to make you change your view of other people. But there is also a very philosophical perception. I've talked about this, and I also said that the Hawamim provide a philosophical worldview, as opposed to Aristotelian or Platonic worldviews. And I said that, the Hawamim sort of like bring to the fore a worldview that is very God-centric, as opposed to Aristotle, whose views were very man-centric, earth-centric, right? Here's another deviation from the prevailing institutions of thought at the Prophet's time that the Quran has brought. And that is the other level of materialism that I want to talk about. Surah Zukhruf also tells you that the materialism in the strict sense, meaning the truth can only be gauged through sense perception. Right? What is this? It's not a trick question. It's like, he probably has something else in mind. This is a bottle of water, right? Okay, how do we know that this is a bottle of water? Because you can see it. So you had to use what in order to decide that this is a bottle of water? You have to use your eye. That is called sense perception. Okay, I need to touch this in order to feel, oh, well, this is plastic. I need to taste it with my tongue in order to decide that it is water, and so forth. That is all sense perception. How many senses do we have? 5, right? So there is that group of philosophers, again, all started with Aristotle, who basically says there is no knowledge in this world that can be acquired through any means except sense perception. The only possible way for human beings to understand the world is through their sense perception. Now, I will ask you, a very simple and basic questions. Do you agree with that worldview? Do you agree that any form of knowledge in the world can only be acquired through sense perception? So is the answer is yes or no? So you agree that the only knowledge that can be acquired is sense perception. You agree with that. And you don't agree with that. We have a father and son feud over here. Who agrees that the only form of knowledge in the world can only be acquired through sense perception? Come on, someone needs to support this poor guy. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, very good. Who thinks that there are other forms of knowledge that cannot be acquired through sense perception? Okay. Now, here's the thing. There is no argument. Perhaps, inshallah, as we discuss tonight, you guys will be able to decide for yourselves which group, is right and which group is wrong. Well, I guess there's no right or wrong in these matters, but which group has a better claim to the truth. There is no idea in the history of man that led more people astray and drove more people away from the path of God than this materialistic idea. That it is only through sense perception that we can acquire knowledge. And according to this view, a child that comes to this world is what? Is 100, well, of course, naked. That goes without saying. But a child that comes to this world is 100% empty. Is 100% empty, and every form of knowledge that child acquires over time is acquired through their sense perception. Okay? Now, this assumption precludes something very, very important. Under this understanding, there is no such thing as fitrah. You don't come to the world with any preconceived ideas. The notion that God exists in our fitrah goes against this assumption. Because, they would say that God as an idea was acquired because you heard the imam or the priest at your church talk about it. If that was not the case, you would never think of God. Do we agree with that?
No. What? Say the question again?
If you did not hear the concept of God from your imam or your father or your mom or read it in a book, that you would never, ever, ever think of the concept of God. It would not even occur to you.
Yes, possibly. No. Yeah. Not seeing, not knowing. No.
This, I think, is where the philosophers have divided. Okay? You have philosophers such as Aristotle, you have John Locke, David Hume, and others who basically argued that our understanding of the world is entirely materialistic. Okay? There is no knowledge in this world except one that is acquired by the sense perception. Okay? And then you have others such as Plato or Immanuel Kant, definitely the Quranic perspective that tells you we do come to this world with knowledge that we are not taught. The knowledge of survival, the knowledge of mathematics, the knowledge of logic, the knowledge of God, that this is all knowledge that exists with us. That knowledge gets polished or suppressed over time by sense perception. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on this point, but I want to delve right into my own critique of sense perception, because again, this is how people shoot down religion. They will say religion is entirely based on faith. You know, like Dr. Khurshid over there said. He said, I have to believe in God. I don't see God. I don't use my sense perception to establish the existence of God. Therefore, this is a choice. It's a matter of faith, as opposed to what? As opposed to science. Science is based on sense perception. I know that it's there because I see it with my own eyes. I touch it, I drink it, I know this is a water bottle. Show me how to do that with God, right? And so people who believe in God, they rely on unreliable knowledge that they acquire through indoctrination and dogma when they go to their churches and their mosques and so forth. But the knowledge of the plastic bottle is not a dogmatic knowledge. This is a universal, objective knowledge because it is based on observation. I observe an object and build my hypothesis accordingly, right? So, Brother Tahir over there, he looked at this plastic bottle and he said, okay, yeah, this is a plastic. I tasted it tastes like water and it looks like a plastic bottle. So he says, this is a plastic bottle, right? And so Brother Hisham does the same thing. And he comes and it tastes like water, it's plastic, it feels like plastic, and it looks like a plastic bottle. So he says this is a plastic bottle, right? Brother Shihan does the same thing. Madiha does the same thing. I tasted it, it's water, it feels like plastic, it looks like a plastic bottle, then it is a plastic bottle. In order for us to establish that this is a plastic bottle, what is it that these 5 people had to do? They had to use their sense perception in order to establish that. They had to observe a fact. And it is through the observation of facts that we come to conclusions. This process in science is called induction. All right. So what is induction? Induction is when I build a hypothesis based on facts. Based entirely on facts. As opposed to what? The other form of knowledge is called deduction, is when I operate with an assumed idea. Not an observation, but an idea. I don't want to get you into the complexities of this, but again, Surah Zukhruf talks about materialism. And materialism says the only form of knowledge in the world that is acceptable, that is admissible, is knowledge that comes through sense perception. So I want to show you that sense perception is not always reliable. Okay? Number 1. If I have a brother here who is blind, who is visually impaired, will that brother be able to observe the same bottle, the same object, the way Brother Tahir would? So we are not all capable of performing the same observation because of limitations that we might have. Okay, those limitations could be physical limitations because we lost some of our sense perceptions. They could also be mental limitations. A child will not be able to recognize this as a water bottle. An insane person will not recognize this as a water bottle, right? That's number 1. Number 2, if I look at the water bottle and I bring Brother Tahir, and he's looking at the water bottle, what is he going to see? He's going to see a plastic bottle that has water in it that says Crystal Geyser. But if I have a PhD professor from Stanford that did his research on how plastic can contaminate water and cause cancer, what is he going to see?
He's going to see something that is dangerous.
He's going to see something that is perhaps dangerous. He's going to say there's a truckload of plastic particles in this water. You should not drink this water. Okay? Let me make it even simpler for you guys. You know, how many of you have great knowledge of like automobiles? Like if your car breaks down, you'll be able to, you know, open up, pop the hood, look inside. Yeah, it's the, and then you know, throw this fancy sounding name, needs to be fixed. How many of you can do that? None of us. But that same brother that walked into Salat al-Jum'ah today, you know, the day laborer that works at Jiffy Lube, this guy that was wearing, you know, untidy clothes and there's oil stains on his clothes, when he pops the hood, what is he going to do? He's going to observe the same thing that you and I observed, but he will see it very differently than us. A doctor looks at the patient, can tell, oh, you know, that's melanoma, that's skin cancer. But you will look at the patient and you'll say, he is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with him. There's a little mole there, but otherwise, nothing is wrong with him, right? Observation is as reliable as the knowledge that we already have about the object or similar objects, right? Which means what? In order for me to observe an object, if I said that in order for me to observe an object and build a theory based on that observation, and that knowledge depends on a prior knowledge, then what am I saying about that prior knowledge? In order to acquire that prior knowledge, it needs what? It needs prior knowledge. And in order to get that prior knowledge, it needs what? It needs prior knowledge, and it keeps going like this ad infinitum. Ultimately, I have to rely on my faith at some point or the other. I need deduction and not induction at some point or the other. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Inductive observation may look scientific and looks reliable at face value, but you know, the philosophers of science, when they investigated it, they actually showed us that there is no difference between induction and deduction. It's all just an illusion. All right? Number 3. Some of the other things that I wanted to share with you is this. This morning when I was driving, coming to Jum'ah, on NPR, there was this, I think, team of researchers from the University of Utah or something like this. You know, they do a lot of archaeology, a lot of anthropology and stuff like that. So they discovered skeletons of ancient men and women in Peru, in the mountains of Peru, right? The Andes Mountains, whatever they call them. 9,000 years old. Okay? And then they basically, there was like, you know, 10 or 15 tombs, and they found like a couple of women and mostly men. And they found with one woman, they found with her, that was today by the way on NPR, they found with her what appeared to be like tips of spears and some other tools, right? So as someone who's listening to NPR, what conclusion would you reach when you hear that story? See what he said? There's a woman that died from spears, right? Good job, I mean, because that is the exact conclusion that I reached. Okay, I said, well, man, that must have been like some kind of a gruesome murder scene. You know, there's this crazy maniac who probably like, you know, assaulted this woman and then killed her. You know, just, that's the first thought that occurred to me, okay? Because that is my cultural background. The guy that made the discovery, you know what he said? He said, and that is an indication that women at that time may have also been hunter-gatherers, and they participated with men in the hunting process, and there was no sexism, there was perfect equality in that society. No, the spear that was just with her. We don't know if it penetrated her. We don't know if it hurt her. We don't know. It's just she had a tip of a spear. You said someone killed her with a spear, which in my opinion is probably more plausible, right? Maybe there's this raid, some other tribe came, killed everyone, they took their positions and ran away. Now the researcher, when he looked at that, he said, oh, this is a sign that they lived in an egalitarian society where men and women are treated equally, and men and women were both hunter-gatherers, there was no institutions of sexism. What does that tell you about observation? That observation gets biased by what? It gets biased by our culture, gets biased by our society. If that same, we live in the age of Me Too, we live in the age of Iron Woman, we live in the age of, female lead characters, and everyone is freaking out about sexism and so forth. Hollywood is just going nuts out of its way to produce more movies and more shows with female lead characters, that this is gradually becoming a laughable matter. Like, it's becoming so fake that, it's very hard to swallow anymore. Even Terminator, they ruined the great franchise, right? But the point here is that 30 or 40 years ago, had they found that same skeleton or whatever, they would have reached the same conclusion or different conclusions. It's the same observation, a scholar with the same education looking at the same object, but because of the cultural and social bias, they were lead, different conclusions. And so what we call science is ultimately determined quite more often than not the science that the sun rises from the east, but the more complicated scientific observation is often driven by cultural bias, is often driven by social bias, okay? Let me even give you a little bit more. Wouldn't you agree with me that scientific observation is often biased by funding?
Yeah.
When I was telling the brothers in my halaqah the other day, so I read this CDC report about air travel in the age of Corona, okay? And, there is all this data that, air travel is like 95% safe. It's safer than, anything else. When I said that to the brothers, he told me, so who funded that study? Delta Airlines? Is it Emirates? Like, who funded that study? You never know these days. You literally never know. You have to look at the source of funding, because today they will announce a study with statistics, again, falsifiable with the right tools and everything, and then another university 2 weeks later will publish another study that says the exact opposite. Remember big tobacco in the 1980s when they came to to the Senate for the big historic hearings, right? What did they establish in the Senate using science? They established that pizza is more harmful to man than smoking. There's probably merit to that when you think about it. There's some merit to that argument, but I don't think that pizza, one slice of pizza is as harmful as smoking a cigarette, right? But they established through science that all this stuff about smoking hurting people and pulmonary cancer and all that, this is all it's not true. It's not true, right? So the simplistic notion that the material appearances of the world are enough for us to determine what reality is and what fact is not an accurate statement, okay? And I did not even talk about the errors with falsifiability. I didn't talk about political pressure. I didn't talk about government persecution. I mean, think about the electric car, for example. How long have we had the technology for the electric car? Close to 100 years. We've had the technology for the electric car close to 100 years. When did we see electric cars? 10, 15 years ago? Who started the electric car? The modern manifestation of the electric car? Tesla, right? Elon Musk. Elon Musk is an outlier. He's insane. He made so much money from PayPal, and he dumped, to this day, Tesla has not made money. The Tesla experiment should have never existed. It defies logic. It defies economics. It is someone who was determined to get it done. I don't care what it's going to cost me. That's the only reason we see electric cars today. Otherwise, GE and Ford, they would have continued to shelve all the research on electric cars, buy it from those PhD students, and then shelf it. Buy it and shelf it. That's what they've been doing for 100 years. It took an insane person who completely defied logic and the desire for profitability in order to get it done. And so when we look at where we are today as humanity, had Elon Musk not done the electric car, if we were in 1985, we would have said that the internal combustion engine is the best science we have. Would that be an accurate statement? It wouldn't be. But would that statement be supported by sense perception? Absolutely. You see where I'm going with this? It is not true. It is not true that everything we know comes from sense perception. It is not true. Sometimes you have dreams about people you've never met, about situations that you've never been through, about countries and places. I've had dreams about countries and I've never seen those places anywhere. And then when I go and visit that country and I go to a particular city near the border or whatever that is, and I go eat at a restaurant, and then I look through the window and I see that same scene that I saw in a dream and told my wife about it 10 years ago. And again, this is documented. This is not just me having a supernatural moment. This is documented, right? Your sense of right and wrong. Look at humanity. There is a lot of ethical practices that all human beings agree upon. Wouldn't you agree? The idea of saying bad words, all human beings agree that saying a bad word is not necessarily a good thing. Profanity, how did we all agree upon that? The idea that talking about someone behind their back is not necessarily a good thing, right? The idea that we all have to cover somehow with varying proportions. The idea that we need to put clothes on our skin. Yes, there are parts of the world in native Africa or whatever where people cover a lot less, but they still cover something. We consider it a complete defiance of human norms when someone is completely in the nude publicly, right? So again, I can go on and on and on to establish that there is knowledge that is not acquired by sense perception, but I want to make sure that we as Muslims at least realize that it is our faith. The Quran tells us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instilled His love in our hearts. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it so that we will find Him even if you are growing up in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, you've never read the Quran, you've never read the Bible, you never watched TV or went on Facebook. You will find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because your heart will always point you in the right direction. So back to Surah Zukhruf. What I said so far is that Surah Zukhruf gives you the spiritual enlightenment to understand that using materialism is not the only way to gauge someone's success. And you should not allow the ornamentation of the world to basically get to you and make you change your perceptions and make you change your priorities. But second, there is this intellectual defeat of the material understanding of the universe. One last thing, or a couple of more things, inshallah, that I want to cover. And next time we will delve into the surah. The surah basically highlights the following: that material gain and material perspectives never propelled a civilization into prominence. Let me repeat that. Material gains and material perspectives never propelled a civilization into prominence. Okay? I want you to think of the Roman Empire. What comes to mind when I say the Roman Empire? See, everyone is silent. What comes to mind when I say the Roman Empire? Say again? No, they existed way before Christians. The Romans built great roads and highways. That is a fact. Is that the first thing that comes to our minds? No. The Romans occupied massive territories and subjugated populations and turned free men into slaves. That is true, right?
Yeah.
But we don't feel proud of the Roman Empire. It's like one of those things that I want to forget. Like, good riddance kind of thing. When I say the Mongols, what comes to mind? cruelty, rape, sacking of cities, laying waste to entire countries, destruction, death. Okay? Mongol soldiers were instructed to rape as many women as they can in every single city that they acquire. By right and by authority of their generals, they are instructed to do that. They don't have a choice. Even if one Mongol soldier is good, they can't. They will get killed, right? And that's why, I mean, they say that the Genghis Khan never been with two women in his life. Let me repeat that. He never been he never been with the same woman twice in his life. Never been with the same woman twice in his life. Why? Because there was this abundant supply of women available for him to rape every time he wanted to. There is DNA from Genghis Khan, and I think they say 1 out of every 4,000 human beings today. This is how much he spread his DNA through rape. That is what comes to my mind when I think of the Mongols. Where are the Mongols today? There's that little country, you know, in North China, between China and Russia, that is called Mongolia. Gone, erased from history. All right. I mean, if you're talking about the race, you know, racially, yes, yeah, of course. You know, in fact, the Mongols are also kind of like the Turks. They're Turks, you know, in their DNA. They're Turks. The good ones converted to Islam, right? You know, Tamer Lane and others. Yeah. They've come to Islam, but you know, the country of Mongolia, the civilization is gone. Maybe racially some of them still exist, but the civilization is gone, right? Think of the British Empire. What comes to mind when I say the British Empire? There's nothing but negative feelings when I say, like, I'm getting angry just saying it. What bloodsuckers, exactly. That's exactly what they did. Morally bankrupt people who could not survive on their own, so they have to go and suck as much blood as possible from poor, peaceful populations around the world, right? They displaced people. They took the Indians and brought them to Africa in order to, you know, to put them in servitude, right? They displaced populations and occupied territories and caused internal turmoil. And to this day, when they left their colonies, they installed tyrants in order to keep the peace in those colonies, you know, post-independence. When I think of the French civilization, what comes to mind? See, brutality and ruthlessness does not create moral civilization. What will the world think about the United States of America 200 years from today? What will the world say? How will we be remembered? Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Vietnam, Korea, Cambodia, the Iraq War, Afghanistan, Syria, the puppet regimes in Saudi Arabia and Egypt and the UAE that are on American payroll. What are we going to remember? Are we going to remember Google and Facebook? Are we going to remember iPhones? Like, how did this really benefit humanity? How are we going to remember the Native American genocide? What are we going to remember? Are we going to remember Trump? See? Everything I said, I'm not suggesting that there's nothing good about America to be remembered 200 years later. I'm just talking about this is a civilization. Can we call this a moral civilization? We can't. We can't. Yet, trace the steps of the Muslims, every country and every territory they stepped into. What did they bring with them? The Muslims?
No, I mean...
Every territory the Muslims stepped into, what did they bring with them? They bring light, they bring education, they bring human rights, they bring law, they bring order, they bring justice, they enable local populations to practice their own faith, they allow them to, you know, live their own lives, They protect their property from confiscation and acquisition. They bring administrative systems. They bring governance. They bring knowledge. But above all, what did the Muslims bring? The Muslims brought their own moral philosophy of the world.
But that's not what they're remembered for.
Right? No, that is what they're remembered for. To this day, I look at the actual space holder, if you will, of the Islamic civilization is gone. Whether it was Medina or Kufa or Basra or Damascus or Baghdad or Granada, maybe we have forgotten the places, but we never forget that the Islamic civilization is still healthy. Right? We never forget that today, the number one conversion that happens in the world from one faith to another happens to the favor of Islam. Right? That no one can deny. And I think that is, and I've said this so many times before, that is why Islam continues to be the most dangerous alternative philosophy to the Western world. And that is why it is fought right and left. They don't fight you because they're scared that you'll become terrorists. That's just an excuse. They know that you're not. They fight you because they know that you stand for a very powerful and robust moral system that can be an alternative one day. And they don't want that. When people are exposed to the true teachings of Islam, this is what they find. They find that worldview. They find a very simple perspective. God created the universe. He made us his trustees on earth. He sent prophets and messengers. There is no dogma. There is nothing crazy, right? There is no, abna'ullahi wa ahibba'u. We are the God's chosen people, and everyone else is just Gentiles, inferior to us. They don't have, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, complicated theology that even they themselves do not understand. They don't have God manifested himself in rats and cows and elephants. There's nothing like this. It's the simplest, most straightforward theology. And that is what Surah Zukhruf also teaches us, right? And that is, it is moral civilizations that last, that endure. Not ones that had more political or military power. Not ones with more inventions. Not ones with more wealth. Not ones with more territory, right? But ones that have left in the world a moral system that makes people happier. Simple moral system that makes people happier, right? Why are we, generally speaking, as Muslims, who live in the West, why are we less happy than we would have wanted? Exactly. Because we are so inundated in Western ideas and Western thought and Western institutions that our access to our own ideas is limited. I only find it when I come to the masjid for Jum'ah, the khutbah in most masajid is irrelevant and people don't really benefit anything. And so, where do I get that? So all I have left is just, whatever I read see on CNN and whatever I read on Facebook, all mixed up with these Western ideas that may be advanced. They're advanced ideas in the sense that they're technologically advanced, but they haven't made us happier. It does not provide me with this moral system that is applicable, that is meaningful, that is simple, right? That makes people feel, man, if only people can live like this, right? 1400 years later, with all the battering that Islam has been sustaining, with all the bruising, with all the injuries, with all the wounds, with all the constant abuse and assault that the Ummah has been sustaining throughout 1400 years, here we are. We're weak, but our ideas are strongest as ever. The ideas never got weak. Just the minute we remove a little dust and we take it out, we realize right away the gold that we have. Right?
The message never changed.
Say again?
The message never changed.
Because the message never changed. And the message will never change if the message itself is sound and robust. Why would it change? Why is it that Christianity has to change all the time? Because the message itself is weak, and so the message needs to adapt, otherwise it'll die. Right? You know, the Christianity of today, by the way, and the Christianity of the Middle Ages are completely two different forms of Christianity, right? Christianity of today emphasizes material success, emphasizes happiness in this life, emphasizes wealth. You are religious, that means you're wealthy, right? All these pastors who have their private jets, and because that is modern day evangelical Christianity, modern day Catholicism, right? It emphasizes happiness and success, peace in this world. Whereas medieval Christianity emphasized happiness where? In the afterlife. Because the world is a difficult place, is a messed up place. It's okay to be poor. It's okay to be oppressed, because one day everything is going to be okay. The philosophy changed because it's convenient to change it. But we are always getting ourselves in trouble as Muslims because we are not able to change our philosophy. Because it makes sense. It brings that happiness. And so that is basically the gist of Surah Zukhruf. And inshallah ta'ala, next time I will delve into the surah and cover it entirely, hopefully, inshallah ta'ala, next Friday. Jazakumullah khair for listening so attentively, and I will take some questions, inshallah. And then after that, I wanted to recognize, my dear sister Madiha and her family. And so, inshallah, if you guys have any questions, please do share right now.
This is a comment.
Mm-hmm.
The morals are not acquired by sensical things, by senses, all these things. They are innate in you, and you develop them, or you don't develop them without the sensory thing.
Morality?
Morality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That is another form of knowledge that it has not been acquired through sense perception. It's our moral sense, right? Knowing what is right and what is wrong. In general, it's just a voice in the back of your head. You don't need to be taught these things. You just know them. It's just little kids. They try to overcome that voice. They try to get permission from their parents not to do it. But deep inside, they know it needs to be done. Definitely. I went through this exercise with my kids a while ago. Is it possible in nature to have a perfect circle? Why not?
Natural generation.
Say again?
Natural generation.
Natural what?
Generation. It just doesn't make perfect circles.
It is impossible, practically and rationally, to have a perfect circle in nature. Why? Because because what is a circle? A circle is basically, a perfect circle is this object whose sides have a curvature. But if you take that curvature and break it down, it's actually straight, lines or small segments, very, very small, that are connected to each other. Okay? That is essentially what it is. And so the perfect circle doesn't exist in nature. Are there two values in nature that exist that are equal? There's no such thing. Equality does not exist in nature. Yet equality exists as a rational concept in our minds. Why? Because if I say that I have 2 apples here and 2 apples there, are those two values equal? No, because one apple is going to be a little bit heavier than the other. So what do I need to do? I need to find one that is microscopically the same weight as the other one. Is that possible? It's 100% impossible, because there will be a variation. This is like the your thumbprint, there will always be a variation, even if it's a 0.0000001 gram. There will always be a variation. Okay, yet, so our sense perception tells us that equality does not exist in nature. Yet in our minds, we believe that equality as a mathematical concept is possible. Where do we get that? Have you thought of this before? Yeah, I can go on and on and on, just to show you that you have a lot of knowledge in your mind that is not backed up by sense perception. Morality is definitely one of them. Any other questions? All right, Jazakumullah khair. I wanted to recognize Sister Madiha over there, her dad, our dear friend Dr. Khurshid. So Madiha is in high school, and her dad sent me a video of her a few weeks ago, and basically she participated in this pageant. And when we say the word pageant, we always assume that it's something that is very, very different from what we do as Muslims. The competition is usually about superficial zukhruf, right? The competition is always about the superficial beauty and stuff like that. So Madiha participated, mashallah, in this pageant with her Muslim attire, with her modesty, with her hijab. She wears hijab full time, mashallah, and she gave this really eloquent speech, that made me feel like, why have we not asked her to speak in the community before? All these gems really in this beautiful community of brothers and sisters that are just like they're waiting to be discovered, mashallah. And I know that that Madiha is one of them. She's been with my daughter Zainab in their halaqah for I think about 3 years, maybe almost 2.5 years. She's I think now with Sister Salihah, and she won the competition, and it was, I think, a first. It was a first, for a Muslim girl to participate or a Muslim girl to win something like this. So we wanted to recognize her tonight. We wanted to say that we're very proud of you, and that, mashallah, your parents have done such a tremendous job raising you and the kids, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and your parents and your siblings. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make you an ambassador for Islam, a representation of our community everywhere you go. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make you an inspiration for other girls and boys in this community. And I wanted to invite Dr. Khurshid and Madiha to come to the, we don't have a stage, but at least come to the table. I want you guys to say a couple of words if you don't mind. And Madiha, please do join us, and make sure that you guys are looking at the laptop so that people can see you on the live feed as well. And Nush, would you like to come introduce Madiha? You good? Okay. All right. So,
Imam, it's okay if she can speak a few words.
of course, both of you. I turn this off and I turn this one on. And let me adjust. There you go.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. And, I know it is a moment of like a pride and proud for being a parent, as well as for all the Muslim community, that we got honored nearly a few weeks ago about the achievement of Maria. But I just want to share you the feelings as a parent when she told me that she has to go for this pageant. And she told me, like, going for a pageant, as Imam mentioned, all the negative things come in her mind. I said, really, you want to go? And she said yes. And my questions to her was like, you're going to keep us proud, right? No matter what you do, you are representing Muslim Ummah over there. The whole US is watching you. May Allah bless you and have helped you in all the competition. But make sure one thing, don't let your community, don't Muslim Ummah let down, and keep your honor and modesty upheld. So Alhamdulillah, she did a very good job, and I thank to the Masjid, Imam, and the community, and I wish her mom and sisters are here. They have done an incredible job in supporting her. So sending her, the decision to send her, it was a big one, but alhamdulillah we did it. And she made me like cry twice. And she have done it before in the softball. I will let her do what she does in her real life. And other thing was, I want to have a message for the parents as well as the young kids over here, is that we should trust our kids. No matter what they do, let them fly. They can make wonders. Believe them. And that's what I've learned from the last experience. And for the young ones, trust yourself. Trust your inner instincts. No matter how you look, if you are a girl, you are in a hijab or not in a hijab, just trust yourself. You can make wonders. If you are a boy, you have a beard or not a beard, or you have a different hairstyle, no matter how you look, you are incredible. They have to change. You don't need to change. So trust yourself. Keep your morals high, and keep your heads up. I'll give it to Madia, and then she can share what she is doing. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Madia Khurshid. I am your current Miss California Junior Teen. And before I begin, I would like to thank Tarbiya and all my supporters and mentors. I've been here since the very beginning when Tarbiya was very little, and I'm very proud of where we've come. To be very honest, I'm just an ordinary girl with an extraordinary cause. This class president isn't your average one-trick pony. When I'm not breaking the beauty standard, you can find me playing competitive softball in the hopes to take home a national gold medal one day. In my free time, I advocate for the mental health of teens all across the world. My dream is that every girl in the world has the guts to stand where I was and represent their culture and religion on a national stage. My name is Madia Khurshid, and I choose love. Thank you.
Imam, we have gifts.
Please, yes, Sister Layla.
Here's a gift from your father, husband, with the VIA team. Thank you. Thank you.
Can you get a picture?
Take a picture.
Yes.
I think I probably need to wear my face mask.
Thank you. One, two, three, smile. Is the audience smiling? Okay.
I smile.
Can't see anything.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, guys. Jazakallah khair. Please continue to make dua for Madiha and all her colleagues, all the brothers and sisters, and her generation. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect them, protect their hearts, and make them the future leaders of this community. Allahumma ameen. Inshallah, we have just a couple of minutes to pray Isha. Right now is 8:22, so we'll pray around 8:30. Inshallah, we have coffee and donuts, but I was advised by our team that it is probably safer for you guys to take the coffee and the donuts on your way out and enjoy them as you go home, inshallah, just so that you're not eating and violating the safety and health precautions. You are also welcome to wait outside or to stand outside, and have your coffee. We just can't do that indoors, and you guys know why. So please forgive us for that. جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر الإنسان لفي خسر الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Inshallah, we will pray at 8:30. جزاكم الله خير. السلام عليكم.
White wine.
He's going out asking questions. Yes, what up, man?
I remember, wearing around. Come here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's good for me because you listening.
Follow me.
You feel the people right in the back.
I know. What is this one?
He's all, I didn't call, he did like thinking skills. So who can you go
No, Andrew's not here. Andrew's here now. Somebody